Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you to join Hans and Scotty live this Thursday at Bar W Beef, the new state-of-the-art retail butcher shop supporting Utah farmers and ethical farming practices. All at supermarket prices. That's Bar W Beef.
Love that.
Only in Nephi.
Love that.
They may regret having Hans down there, though.
Hans ate 2 cows.
He may take a whole cow with him.
I know.
It was ethical. He did it ethically, but
he's actually the perfect person to have down there and not perfect person to have down there. All right, joining us now, he is the coach, my co-host for Jazz pre, half, and post game, the one and only Tim Lacombe. What's going on, Tim?
Can you imagine the food talk when they're down there? The way they fillet things and
it's going to be
it's already a sports show only 3 out of 5 days a week. So
yeah, it's going to be serious, but you're going to be informed.
Yeah, I think Zaggett's going to sponsor them pretty soon here.
They're gonna. You can review their show on Yelp now. You don't even have to go on the podcast app. All right.
I give the conversation 2 stars, but the food 5.
The Jazz wrapped up the preseason 4-2. You know, one of them was a win over the New Zealand Breakers. They had a really, I thought, fun win over Sacramento when every team kind of treated it like a regular season game. And then Friday's showing against Portland was a little concerning to me. They were down huge in the first half playing their starters. Was it a successful preseason for the Jazz?
I think it was a successful preseason. I think more than anything, going into the season, I think one of the more important things that's been done is roles have been defined. And I think leaning into the young players is going to lend itself to, unfortunately, more nights like the other night. As you look at stats, Jazz are shooting the ball better in the preseason, but, I dare you to try to find somebody with a positive to negative assist to turnover ratio, and that's kind of been a huge issue. And so it's going to be, playing young players and going out there and taking your lumps. I mean, we're watching it firsthand with Isaac Wilson. When you're new at something, you're not as proficient perhaps as the people that have done it before you. And so, this is a very important developmental time, as much as people don't want to hear that for these young players.
Now, Coach, you know this, but I think that Will Hardy is a good coach. I do. I thought what he did last year, the play hard and pass stuff, I guess it was it last year, Ben, that he wadded up the offense and threw it into the garbage can like a month into the season because it wasn't working and drew up something else, and it ended up really working, and they go on this hot stretch. I think he's a really good coach. Do you expect him to be different now that they're leaning young? Does that make any sense? Is he going to have to put up with some stuff for longer and maybe fight the instinct to fix it?
Well, yes and no. I think Will is Will. And if you look over since he's been here, every single team that he's had has had a very impressive stretch of the season where they played great basketball. And, regardless of how the season ended, there was a period of time in each season where that team was really playing well. It is more than anything, I think it's a time where he, can develop strengths that maybe he's not as proficient in, and one of those maybe is patience. Some of these young players are going to demand that, and this is a really important time to teach and develop for the players. But I also think, you learn something every time you encounter something new, and having this many young players on an NBA roster, the future is certainly very bright. The interim, you got to kind of work through it. So it's going to test Will, but I have all the faith in the world. I think he's shown us what he can do. And like I said, to have each one of his teams play, over a couple-week period of really, really good basketball, it's hard to get your guys on the same page, and he's done it every time, every year he's been here.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's going to be hard for Will to not fix, because again, there's just some things you actually you want them to play better, but you can't fix it by just saying, okay, well, Patty Mills is going to play over Isaiah Collier, even though I know that's what's going to happen to start the season because Isaiah's still hurt. But the Jazz are going to have some real turnover issues, and we saw that a lot in the preseason. A lot of games where they were well over 20. Acceptable is probably 12 or 13. Jazz are going to be maybe double that a lot of nights. How do you put up with that when you know you actually still have to try and run an offense? Like if you can't get the ball moving to the spots it has to, you got to be patient as a head coach. So I imagine in your history that's hard to do when you're playing young guys.
No, it really is, and I think that again, that's why this role definition early in the season is important. You know, the front office has definitely assembled really talented young players, but the only way these guys get better is by going out there and playing. And we know from experience that there's going to be a lot of lumps to be taken. So I think you have to understand what the weakness is, and you mentioned it. I will say in the short period of time I've watched this team, you know, the preseason, the ball moves way better than it did last year. So these turnovers are in a lot of ways different. You know, Majerus used to talk often about the different types of turnovers. Some are where you're trying to make a play for others and where you're trying to, you know, fit a square peg into a round hole. And there's two different types of turnovers, omission, commission, he used to call them. And I think this team does a good job of trying to find each other. And so it's just refining some of those things and then getting rid of some of the silly ones, the careless ones, the left-handed passes across court, the things you just can't do, you know, in a high school game, let alone the NBA.
When it comes to evaluation of a team, and more specifically, I guess each individual player, if you're not judging a team by wins and losses, or even stats for that matter, how do you evaluate young players in their progress from a coaching perspective?
You got to get really down, you know, on the micro level. I think you've got to study patterns. You've got to study improvement, decision making. You know, you can look at a guy like Colin Sexton, for instance. When he first got here, you know, his ability to make plays is staggering, but at the same time, you know, it's when and how and where. And I think over the time he's been here, he's definitely leaned into decision making, and he's really drilled it. And some of these guys, you know, they've been better than everybody for so long that they can kind of just go and make a play on the fly. That isn't as easy. You've got to understand, first of all, where your guys are and what they do well. And then you've got to understand how the defense is rotating and what passes are going to be there. And that's the stuff the young player can only get with reps, like live reps. You know, you can simulate it all, but you're looking for guys to get better over the course of time. That's the way you do it. So you got to get down to, you know, film every game and evaluate and ask, hey, what were you seeing here? What were you thinking here? That's how you really, you know, get the pulse. And sometimes fans don't always get that. You know, they see guys go out there, but I mean, I would say go back and study Colin Sexton from time he got here to now. That is vastly improved, and I think that's what, you know, in every essence, these guys have got to do themselves.
All right, just use your gut. Don't overthink about it. In order,
I can't do that.
Who are the Jazz's 4 best players?
Larry Markkinen, Colin Sexton, Keontae George, and you know what, the fourth, I'm really hoping, and I loved what I saw from the preseason, and then that's Walker Kessler. And I'm not saying that Walker is going to go out there and get 20 and 10 every night, but his role is really important to this team. The way this team is built, if he will sprint the floor and stretch the defense in transition on the offensive side, if he'll sprint the floor and build the base of that defense on the way back, you know, if he can fight through disappointment, because there's a lot of that, I think he's got, you know, the right mindset going into the season. So I'm going to say those 4 right now.
I think it's a pretty good sign if Keontae George is the Jazz's 3rd best player. And look, you can say, well, big picture, that's a problem because it means they don't have other players who are better than their second-year guard, who was pretty flawed as a rookie. But I think he has looked really good in the preseason. I think Keontae's playing well.
I do too, shooting 44%. Again, one of the important things for him is to tighten down some of the decision-making things. You know, get rid of some of the careless or non-aware plays that he makes from time to time. And honestly, that's just like taking your screwdriver and tightening that screw down one turn. That's really how close he is. But I really am excited he's shooting the ball well, because he struggled last year to get consistency in that area, and he looks very comfortable, put a lot of time in this summer.
What do you think about our buddy Jamil's prediction that Johnny Juzang was a guy? Is that becoming true? Is that becoming true before our eyes?
We love to roast Jamil, don't we? On that
I can't wait to see Jamil more.
I can't wait to hug him. It's going to be fun to get the crew back together Wednesday night. Johnny Juzang is a bucket. And the other thing that Johnny Juzang is all those things I've been talking about. He's in short periods of time out on the floor in, times where they're resting. He has gone out there in the G League and really understood what his role can be on a team. And he's become, an unbelievably good three-point shooter. And, he's a guy that I would imagine will look to for energy at times, positive, good energy where you can put a guy out on the floor and know, hey, this guy's going to he's going to get back in transition. He's going to space the floor. He's going to shoot the ball really well, and he's going to compete. So, yes, I think Jamil was dead on about Johnny Juzang.
I like him too. Let's take Keontae George out of the conversation because we've already talked about him. The other 5 first- and second-year players, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier, Kyle Filipowski, and who am I missing? Taylor Hendricks. Who caught your eye, or a couple of guys that maybe caught your eye in the preseason?
Well, I love Filipowski's ability to facilitate from the big spot. That is such a weapon in today's game. And, a guy that can handle dribble handoffs, can spin and drive on the defender if they're lazy, and he can space and hit a three. So I really like him. I was not a huge fan. In college, I just thought there was, and part of that is Duke. When Duke's involved, it lowers my impression of somebody. I just cannot give them all of the credence for choosing that place. But that's a whole nother story. So I think Filipowski's one. His tattoo that he should get should be Olynyk 2.0. I think that should be the tat because he reminds me a lot of him. And I loved what Olynyk brought, to that offense. Cody Williams is special. I think as he puts on weight, he made some plays in the preseason that turned my head. And, I'm hoping Taylor Hendricks, he's shooting, I think, only 25% from three in the preseason. But his role, similar to Johnny Juzang, if he can find a way to become a better just knockdown stretch shooter, he's got all the skills defensively. I really think that his success this season will hinge kind of on his ability to knock down those open shots.
This is the last thing for me, Coach, and it's not basketball related. The big story, Andy Ludwig stepping down as offensive coordinator at Utah, obviously, today. And you spent a very long time in the coaching world. And I always find your takes on how things work really, really fascinating. So I guess my question isn't really like, what do you think about this specific instance? But, what's it like operating in this world where, a couple of wins, here today, gone tomorrow. And, it's people actually, their lives, they're living this thing.
Yeah, I'll never forget it. We had a really good thing going at BYU for a long time. It was really basically wake up and figure out how to win 25 games a year and compete, at the highest level. And, slowly, our momentum started to decay a little bit. And like everything is cyclical. I mean, you can't stay on top forever as much as you'd like to. And I'll never forget riding up the elevator after a really tough loss at home. And my great friend I coached with, Terry Nashif, who's also out of coaching now, we looked at each other as the elevator went up, and he's like, "Man, it goes fast." I think you're in the fight so long, you're fighting week to week just to be, to be good, and all of a sudden you kind of look around and the landscape shifted, and some things have changed, and so I feel for Andy and I feel for Utah. This was built up to be a really special season, and I mean the minute that Cam Rising's hand hit that cooler. The very next series, the air was out of the stadium. Everybody was, nervous, and I think they rolled Isaac out there, and, it was a hard way for him to cut his teeth. End of the day, started the season with great aspirations, and Andy's finishing the season way before it's over. If you want to get into coaching, I think that's the door you open. There's exhilarating, awesome times, and there's some times that are probably the lowest you'll ever have in your life.
Coach, you were the best. Can't wait to see you Wednesday night, man.
See you Wednesday.
See you guys Wednesday. I'm excited. Take care.
See you, buddy.
Bye.
All right, there you go. The coach, Tim Lacombe, is going to join us on Mondays throughout the NBA season. We're excited about that.
I'm excited for the season.
I don't blame coaches for living and dying with each win. I mean, we watch so many things on the macro, Ben, and honestly, you take the humanity out of it because we're really just watching a TV show, And imagine, Andy Ludwig went from offensive coordinator at a school that people thought would have were picked to win the
Go to the playoff.
Yeah, to win the conference. And you lose 3 in a row, and all of a sudden it's bam, it's over. That is not a long period of time.
No, it's not. And as we get more distance from this over the next couple of years, I don't think we're going to look back and say Andy Ludwig was the problem. That also doesn't mean it was the wrong decision, but I don't think, the reason Utah is sitting at 4-3 and so far out of the college football playoff conversation is not because Andy Ludwig's their offensive coordinator. That's not why they have failed to meet expectations this year.
There are other reasons.
A lot of other reasons. But you got to try and fix something, and you can't make Cam Rising healthy.
All right, we're not going to be able to turn around the Wit sound as quickly as we usually do. So apologies for that if you're expecting us to air that coming up in the next segment. But with that said, Bartle is up there, and he is reporting what's being said about the entire situation. So we'll go over that coming up right around the corner. Want to remind you about the Hercules Hero of the Week. Nominate the youth sports volunteer for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at kslsports.com/contests and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. We'll have more coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hut, 20 team, hike, 20. It's game week for the Cougars. And the Zone is getting you ready for kickoff. After their miraculous victory against Oklahoma State, the Cougars look to keep their dream season alive with a trip to Central Florida. Listen all week long for the best coverage of Cougar football. Then catch the Cougar pregame show this Saturday at 12:30 with the postgame show immediately following the game. Your home for the best coverage of Cougar football is live on air, online, and on the KSL Sports app.
Yeah, boy!
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you about the Cougar Preview Show with Hans and Scotty. It can be this week, Wednesday, at Tim Daly Nissan Southtown, 11155 South, Jordan Gateway.
The glitch.
In South Jordan. Am I wrong about that? By the way, we're going to talk football here in a second, but I was telling Ben how if somebody was like super into the talk snap, it would be a red flag for me if I were
a coach.
And
we're not talking about anyone specific.
We were just talking about people dancing on the talk snap.
Young athletes being on TikTok and when you're a coach and you're saying, will you give me 10 more minutes of watching film, just understanding why you did this wrong?
Do you want to be
an
influencer, or are you going to learn how to shoot?
Yeah. Because one of them will pay you $0 and one of them will pay you tens of millions.
Right. And maybe it's not fair because the player took a half an hour to come up with that talk snap, and people are allowed to have their personal time. But if I were a coach, I'd look at the talk snap and I'd be like, what are you doing?
Which is a better reason to not have it than, I'm worried about reading the blowback of me and my job. You guys get to have time that is not being an NBA player or a college football player or whatever. It doesn't have anything to do with me or what we're doing here. I'm with you.
Anywho. All right, Kyle Whittingham had his press conference. We are not able this week to get the sound turned around. Apologies for that. But Ben, actually, I'm kind of liking that we can go through some of the quotes and then be a little more reactionary. Of course, the big news, Andy Ludwig stepping down as offensive coordinator at the University of Utah. I'm going from Bartle's Twitter feed. Of course, Steve covers the Utes for KSLSports.com at Bartle KSL Sports. He said, here's the quote, Ben, we've had a change on the coaching staff of his own volition. He stepped down as offensive coordinator. I can't say enough about him. We have a tremendous relationship. He will be missed, a consummate professional and outstanding football coach. Witt added this, Ben, quote, we didn't talk after the game. We talked Sunday. Andy felt the offense just needed to hear a new voice and new leadership. He was just at a loss as to why we couldn't turn things around. Then they made the announcement official that Mike Bajakian will not only be promoted from an analyst, Ben, but he's going to be the interim offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So
Utah even announced him on their Twitter page.
Yes.
He is officially the interim OC, and as Witt said, he has full autonomy. So this is his
Yes.
offense. He gets to make these decisions. Quickly with the Andy Ludwig thing, I do think that's interesting. If Andy felt, and this goes back to, again, I took a little bit of heat, and that's fine, for our conversation after Utah beat Baylor, which was everything can't go out the window when Cam gets hurt. That Cam is the best player on the team. Cam isn't the whole team, and nor is he the entire culture of the team. Like, there's got to be more than that. And I never understood why it felt like when Cam got hurt, everything fell apart. And that's for 3 years in a row now. So if Ludwig is saying, or Witt is saying that Ludwig said that they're just not responding, that is a problem. That if they don't view him as a leader, or they viewed Cam as the leader, and once Cam is gone, they're not listening to Ludwig, or whatever Ludwig's saying isn't resonating, that is a problem if they don't believe in what's being told to them or asked of them that they should follow through on that or need to do it for the betterment of the team or themselves. I think that's a major problem.
I think that quote backs me up. And again, I don't know, we're reading into stuff, right? With Coach Witt didn't like his solutions. You know, that sounds to me like a head coach that went to Coach Ludd and said, what are we going to do about this? I mean, we could go back to that clip we played last hour of Witt sarcastically listing off all the things they suck at offensively. But he probably sat down with coaches and said, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
And somehow it came to, well, I don't know what we're going to do. And so if you get an I don't know on how we're going to fix it from anybody, I mean, put that into, you're, let's say, Ben, you're the manager at a drive-through restaurant. You aren't getting out fries on time. And you go to the manager and you say, hey, what are you going to do about this? And he goes, I don't know. Well, you find a new manager.
When you have 280, this is passing yards. Let me see if I can pull this up fully. We'll just go by, I guess we can, this is a bad site. I apologize. When you go against, let's go to Arizona. When you go against Arizona and you say, okay, you only managed 10 points. Andy, what are we going to do to get more than 10 points on the board? And he says, I think X, Y, and Z were the problem. We'll fix it. And then Arizona State, you score 19 points, and you have 3 at halftime. And you say, all right, Andy, clearly Cam's not healthy and he's not going to play. What are we going to do to fix it? And he says, I think we can get it fixed. And then against TCU, you go out there and you have 7 points. You can't go back to Andy and say, what are we going to do to fix it? That's the problem. Like, what's Andy going to say differently after losing to TCU and only scoring 7 points versus what he said after the Arizona or the Arizona State or even the Oklahoma State game that you only scored 22 points in?
I don't think the solutions work.
To your point, they're just whatever he was telling you that he thinks was the problem wasn't the problem.
Right.
Now maybe it is, and I think there's a real chance the problem's just the offensive line's not good, and when the offensive line's not good, we can't run the ball, and we can't run the ball, we can't throw the ball. I mean that's as simple as football is. I wish it was more difficult than that, but if the offensive line was great and Isaac Wilson had all the time in the world to sit back there, he'd probably look better. If the offensive line was great and Cam Rising never had to roll out, he'd still be playing and Utah might be 6-1. But they're not.
But Coach Ludd isn't the offensive line coach.
No, he's not.
I mean, that's the thing. These things usually march uphill. And you don't go right to the coordinator. Usually it starts with the position coach and then goes to the coordinator. So I don't know. I agree. The line is totally underperformed.
Now,
everybody's underperformed, not named Mekhi Bernard.
And look, I bet you Jim Harding's happy to have a job today. I'm sure he fully recognizes that his job is on the line too. Like,
so what are his solutions?
You bring in a new offensive coordinator this offseason, he's probably going to want to bring some of his own guys. And they might look at the offensive line and say, well, you lost the top recruit, Aaron Dunn, who had already committed to the team on the offensive line. Yeah, you've had some nice recruits come in at tackle, and they've been hit or miss, but they're freshmen and sophomores, so I guess we'll give you another chance to see what they can do. But, yeah, I mean, the whole offensive coaching staff could change easily with the new offensive coordinator.
Oh, and will change, I would guess.
Yeah, at least a couple of pieces will.
Well, Witt has done in the past these weird kind of quasi-internal hires where it actually doesn't disrupt that much because he's plucking Troy Taylor out of obscurity, or
right. Brian Johnson.
Dennis Erickson is coming.
Brian
for
Johnson doesn't
his
have a
last
staff
job.
though to hire.
Yeah, like a lot of these have been these weird hires where you keep people. I mean, because my guess is he doesn't want to fire Quinton Ganther unless he has to.
Right.
So I don't know where they go. Does he hire an established offensive coordinator who's going to bring in a whole staff? That's how it usually happens.
Yeah.
But that's not how it's happened
No, it hasn't.
at Utah. That's not been. And by the way, Witt notoriously forever has been not a networker. That's not one of his strengths.
Yeah.
People then Kalani is a great networker. Bronco randomly was a really good networker. Witt's just not. And you can see it in his coaching hires. He's just not a. He'd rather keep it internal. Go with the people he knows. I mean, look, he's developed Morgan from a GA.
Yeah. Oh, it's why I brought up Brian Johnson.
Well, Andy
Who does
Ludwig,
he know?
yeah, Andy Ludwig himself was his old buddy from Idaho.
That's why people are bringing up Dan Mullins.
Yeah,
Who he knows.
I doubt Dan's taking that gig.
I wouldn't think so, but who does he know? He hires guys he knows.
Yep.
And when you go way outside of the box, it hasn't always worked for Utah either.
Now, I don't know where the connection goes back to the new OC. I don't know his story. I'm guessing we'll learn more about it. But Jake Ian taking over, well, we'll see. I don't know. But yeah, if you underperform this badly, I mean, would it? Is it as simple as it would be fine if Cam Rising were healthy? I kind of don't think so.
I mean, they would have more wins. I don't think Cam Rising loses these 3 games in a row if you had him clicking at the highest level.
If he were healthy, because he obviously lost one of them.
However, and he wasn't healthy. It is worth noting, and I'd love to go back and look at the stats, and I can certainly do it. Utah's second quarter against Baylor, before he got hurt, he gets hurt with 2 minutes, looked atrocious.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
It was really concerning how bad it looked. Already thinking well, he's rusty. Okay, maybe he's just rusty. You got to shake some of that off. But it looked really bad once they got outside of the scripted play calls in the first quarter, the scripted drives. It looked really rough. So maybe it still would have been bad. And if that's the case, it probably goes back to our original conversation, which was maybe it's just the offensive line. And you don't want to put too much credit or blame in one spot, but man, it does a lot when your offensive line plays well. It really cures a lot of your ills or covers up a lot of the issues elsewhere.
But if that were the only problem, this wouldn't be the solution.
Agreed. So you better hope they diagnose the problem correctly.
And can they this year? I don't know.
But it goes back to your take that Witt didn't like the solutions that Andy was offering, or Andy didn't believe the solutions he was offering were going to work anymore.
Well, they didn't work to begin with. They tried to force it to Keithy and Singer. I swear that was his thing. We're going to give, these are our 2 best players, and that did not work.
Yep. So that tells me that maybe the issue is somewhere else. And that issue is usually the quarterback or the offensive line. Usually seems to be an issue. And it might be both at Utah, which is a real problem.
You will hear that sound throughout the day when we get it turned around. And, of course, Bardo will have a write-up at KSLSports.com, and we'll have it up in podcast form, I'm sure. So lots of ways where you can digest all of that. But there's the treetop reaction. Andy Ludwig stepping down as offensive coordinator at the University of Utah. We'll have more coming up next. It is the Jake and Ben Show, 97.5 DKSL Sports Zone. Jacob Ben, 97.5 the KSL Sports Zone. This segment is brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach. Where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Peach Doors and Windows. Did you watch much NFL over the weekend?
A little bit, yeah.
What's our Monday nighter tonight? We've got a doubleheader.
Yeah, we do.
The Ravens are at the Bucks, and the Cardinals play host to the Chargers. But somehow Kansas City is winning games without Patrick Mahomes playing well, which is really frustrating to me and my fantasy team.
Because you have Pat Mahomes.
I have Pat Mahomes, and he sucked this year, but somehow, Ben, they're undefeated, and they beat the Niners in kind of I thought was the best game of the weekend. I know you were loving this.
You thought it was going to be the best game of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like it was the matchup of the two best teams.
Yes.
Absolutely. Super Bowl rematch.
Yeah.
The whole shebang. Kansas City comes out on top again, and Brock Purdy stinks.
Yeah. Brock Purdy's not that good, unfortunately, for Hatch and the 49ers faithful.
Oh, yeah. Hatch, by the way, filling in for Christian this week. And Hatch is a Niners fan. Surprised he woke up through his tears this morning.
The game of the weekend, and actually there was an odd number of blowouts this weekend. There was a lot of like 3-score games, which is super atypical for the NFL. Well, there were 2 really good games. Lions-Vikings was great. Vikings get their first loss. Lions get the win on the road, 31-29. Lions are for real, absolutely. And then the other one, Texans-Packers, which is just Jordan Love rules. I love the Texans too. I usually don't root for Texas teams. I love the Texans. But the Packers are really cool.
Now, listen, I love it that Jordan Love went to Utah State, and he was great at Utah State. And his personal story is really amazing. He's a really easy dude to root for. But I love it that it's working for a third time in Green Bay, where they draft a player while their Hall of Famer still has years left, burn the bridge with the Hall of Famer, trade the Hall of Famer to the Jets.
They go and fizzle out.
And then let the young player come in and take the reins and have success almost immediately.
Yep.
It's amazing that it's worked this way.
And by almost
it's
immediately,
amazing.
The almost is like he was rough for 3 games to start the year last year, and then they made the playoffs and beat the Cowboys.
I think Aaron Rodgers had his first year at the helm was like average. You know what I mean? I don't think they made the playoffs. But he showed enough that you're like, oh, this is a guy.
But there was almost no gap for Jordan Love.
No.
They had a couple of weeks where they're like, is he as good as Aaron Rodgers? And now there's like, I mean, he's not going to be Aaron Rodgers good, but
winning games in the playoffs.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And should have taken them to the championship game. He made a really bad decision at the end of that game, as young players often do. But, man, that's awesome.
Nope, they're really fun. They're really fun. 24-22, they beat the Texans. Both of those teams are 5-2 and some of the better teams in the NFL. As we mentioned, the Lions getting the win over the Vikings. Eventually, the Vikings' lack of quarterback talent would probably catch up with them, and it did a little bit. So, this ESPN game, or the Ravens Chargers, not Ravens, the Cardinals Chargers game tonight is ESPN Plus exclusively, which you and I are both members of. We're in the Plus fan club.
Unfortunately,
we're Plus members, so we can watch this game.
I find all this streaming so frustrating.
It's the first time ever they've had a game exclusively on ESPN Plus for the NFL.
Well, they had this stupid playoff game last year on Peacock, right?
Yeah. We love the good people at NBC and Peacock, though.
Oh, hey, I'm not talking about, what streaming services I like or don't like. I hate that sports is being carved up.
Of course.
Amongst all these streaming services. I understand why they do it. But I had a conversation with a buddy over the weekend who's a Utah season ticket holder and was complaining about the start time, and it's like, man, the fan gets the shaft every time.
Every time, yeah.
Every time.
Yep.
He's like, this particular fan was like, I thought when Utah went into the Big 12, the start times would get better, and it's like, no, they're going to get worse because there are fewer teams that can play relevant football in that window, basically.
Yeah.
And it's because they know you're going to go to the game, so they don't care. And I find that off-putting. But anyway, streaming is the same way. You know, NBA fans are going to have to subscribe to 16 different things, but they're going to do it because they're NBA fans. The NBA knows that, and that's part of, I guess, what they're able to maximize to get these zillion-dollar TV deals. But it doesn't mean that the fan is still taking it in the shorts.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on Wikipedia right now, and I'm scrolling streaming services. So there's the obvious ones that have it's separated by who has like over 100 million subscribers, and it's the obvious ones: Netflix, Disney, Amazon, something I'd never heard of called Tencent, but it serves like all of Bangladesh and China. IQIYI, it's worldwide. You start getting into some of these that are like 1 to 10 million subscribers, which it's amazing that they even have 1 to 10 million subscribers. But like Jio Cinema, which is a part of NBC, Mubi, Globoplay, Viaplay, TVing, it's just like it does not stop. There's no stopping. And what's random is some of these teams are going to say, well, we're a hot upstart. We're just going to spend $50 million to get the rights to NFL games 1 day a week. Or whatever, one NFL game. We're going to put it exclusively on Via Plus or whatever this is that nobody's ever heard of. And they say that's our best bet to get people to subscribe because they have to have this drug and they're going to watch it. And then they're stuck accidentally subscribing for the next 6 months. And hopefully we make enough money off that to buy 2 NFL games next week. But you're right. Who gets hurt there? It's everybody on Monday night who feels like, well, I want to watch the Chargers play. I'm a Chargers guy, so I'm going to spend $6. But I'm not going to spend $6. I'm going to do $18 because that also comes with Hulu and Disney, and my kids want to watch Disney, and I might as well watch Hulu and see what we do in the shadows or whatever it's called. And now you're spending $20 a month, and you get sick of the ads, so you bump it up to $23. And it's like, okay, I'm spending $23 a month to watch one Chargers game 8 months ago.
It's a scam. You know who? Speaking of all these streaming services, desperate to get sports, and actually, if you look at it, football in particular. But it was one of your heroes, Rupert Murdoch, who really proved this concept back in the, what would that be, early 90s? I mean, Murdoch is certainly controversial, but in this way, he really was a visionary because he paid whatever it took to get the NFL rights away from CBS.
People don't realize what a joke Fox was when
they
it started.
were not a thing. They let alone the fourth national network. There was not.
No, there was ABC, CBS, NBC.
That's it.
Yeah, that was it.
And then Rupert paid whatever it was to get the NFL away from CBS and bought The Simpsons, of all things.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, we now have 4 national networks instead of 3. It's pretty wild. But it's on the back of that decision.
I mean,
so
Fox,
like Amazon.
Fox owns Disney, right? Didn't Fox just buy? No, it was the other way around.
No,
Disney
Disney bought Fox's inventory.
Yeah, they bought their inventory.
They did not buy the network or
Fox News. But spent
or
billions
Fox Sports
on it. So to his point, you were right. It was the right gamble. He was brilliant for doing that.
Oh, we don't have Fox News if it's not for that.
Right.
That decision.
He's Australian, right? Like he recognized, like, okay, I see what drives, what moves the needle in the U.S. And it was football, and he was exactly right.
Amazon wants to be a streaming giant, and so they buy the Thursday Night Football package. They bought the crappiest package, but you know what? Football fans are going to come, and you're going to be able to build this entertainment wing of this giant company around football.
It's kind of an interesting.
It's the reason they paid Al Michaels.
Oh, it's an interesting study on ESPN. Now, ESPN being connected to ABC changes it a little bit, but like ABC was not the go-to NFL station. But ESPN, you remember it was really controversial when they bought Monday Night Football.
It was.
Because you were going to have to get cable to watch Monday night. You could always watch it before.
Well, they bought it from NBC.
And now it was exclusive. You had to have a cable provider if you wanted to sit and watch it. You didn't have to do that before. And now everything, I mean, ESPN before that day and ESPN now is totally different. And I bet you that is actually a big separator in what they realized was drawing or where they were going to invest their money. Because everyone talks about the death of Sports Center, Everything they do now is driven for the NFL. Everything. And it's because they own some of the games. That's a big part of it.
Well, I mean, it's why your guy, Sam Bankman-Fried, wanted to put his name on Cal Stadium.
Yeah. Oh, it's why they were advertising in the middle of the Super Bowl.
Yep. Is ESPN getting a Super Bowl?
I believe ABC and ESPN.
ABC will.
We were talking about building up because remember they got in at a very kind of. They went Monday Night Football. I think this latest negotiation got ABC and ESPN a Super Bowl. Yeah. So you're talking about building up. That's what Amazon's building towards.
Yeah, right.
So they can at one point, hey, we've got Super Bowl.
Oh, there's no way. Well, that's got to be so far away. They would never just stream only the Super Bowl.
And I agree with you, but that's kind of the path I think there has been alluded to. They're kind of trodden that path.
Unless they want riots in the streets.
They've talked about making the Super Bowl pay-per-view. Well, that's been in the ether for a while.
We'll never do it.
And people would pay through the nose for it.
They would, but the most watched thing on television every year by a darn mile. They would never flush that. They get better ratings than the presidential debates.
Did you see the 100 most watched broadcasts last year? And 90, I think 96 or 95 of them were NFL or football
It's
related.
like the Oscars and the finale of The Bachelor or something, and then everything else is football.
Sports, yeah.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Yeah, sports, but specifically football. I mean, I would say like 70% of it is...
Yeah, no, it's NFL related.
Right.
Yeah.
Or college football related.
Yes.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. And meanwhile, the rest of television programming, over the air anyway, or even cable, is just totally dying.
Yeah.
Because you can get it all somewhere else much easier. I mean, we're just in this weird in-between, I guess, although I don't see broadcast TV going anywhere anytime soon.
Not as long as live sports exist.
Right.
You got to have something to do.
I mean, look into that.
Tuesday through Wednesday, I guess.
Look into that YouTube NFL Sunday Ticket lawsuit. That'll tell you everything you need to know.
But
They don't want to necessarily go to streaming because the over-the-air is it's the sweetest plum. You know what I mean? Or the cable subscription.
But back to the point. I mean, I said Tuesday through Wednesday. That means 5 days a week. There's football on for 6 months of the year. You know?
Right.
Thursday night football, Friday night college, Saturday all-day college, Sunday, Monday NFL.
All right, Hanson, Scotty G, you're coming up next.
Thanks,
we'll talk to you
Hatch.
tomorrow. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.